Greetings and welcome to the Department of Tangents podcast, Season 2, Episode 6, our final episode of the season, a conversation with comedian, late-night writer, game creator, and Emerson instructor Jon Rineman. Jon Rineman started his career with as tumultuous and triumphant a 15-year run as a comic could envision for themselves. He started in 2003, then freelanced jokes for Jay Leno, wrote jokes for Seth Meyers, including one infamous zinger at the 2011 White House Correspondents Association dinner that earned him the ire of a future president, and wrote for Jimmy Fallon at Late Night and The Tonight Show until 2018. He survived the vicious battles around late night, got to write for the WWE, got married, had his first kid, and then saw things deteriorate quickly, both personally and professionally. A lot of this is detailed in his new podcast, Here's What People Are Talking About. I would refer you to that for some of the more intricate workings of his writing role and his departure from Fallon that we reference here. We address that, but we also talk about his new comedy card game, Antisocial Skills, his post-Tonight Show gig teaching at Emerson College in Boston, and what he learned about the future of late night from his students. Here's Jon Rineman. So I've been wondering how I'm going to stuff your story into a half an hour episode of this podcast. You've got this sort of incredible 15-year period that starts with you in 2003, starting stand-up at the Comedy Studio, graduating at Emerson in 2005. Then by 2009, you're on the Late Night with Jimmy Fallon staff. Then you write this joke for Seth Meyers for the White House Correspondents Dinner. You write for the WWE. You followed Fallon to the Tonight Show, and it sort of leaves off in 2018 with you leaving the Tonight Show. That's an incredible 15-year run. And it also dovetails into a lot of personal things that happen. That's a whole lifetime, professionally and personally, in just those 15 years.
Yeah, it really was. And I think roller coaster is sort of the best way to put it. The interesting thing, though, is that I'll be honest with you, Nick, it's been more of a roller coaster since leaving. It's been since it ended. I should put it that way. It's been more, I think like a lot of people over the past year, it's been really weird. But yeah, the weird thing is that you get in a job like that, and you get in a lifestyle where you're just working every single day. And, people refer to working at that job as a roller coaster and stuff like that. But for me, as crazy as it could get, there was a routine to it. There was, there was always, at the end of the day, it was like, I think only maybe one time ever. Actually, I'll say twice. I'll say, one time in 2017, and then another time close to the end in 2018 were the only two times where I was really like, I don't know how I can come back to work the next day. Like, I don't know how this can go on. And not just moralistically, I just mean like mentally fit. Like, I don't know how to come back from this. But every other time, but everyone there had tons of days like that. I only had two, really. Mm-hmm. And this includes when things happen in my personal life. This includes when times I got sick, times I got really sick and kept working through it. But the reason being that you have that thought, and you're like, you would think that way for 5 minutes, but then you would start getting ready for the next day's show. And when you work on the monologue, or you're known as being a good joke writer, meaning that there's always something for you to do. There's always a bit that needs help. There's a sketch where they could use more jokes, or thank you notes are light, or pros and cons neat. I always ended up writing pros and cons. I think I started out with one writer, and then it was like, can you do it? And then it was my fault that it became everyone's responsibility, because they were like, oh, other people can do this. But there was always something else for the next day. And so it was just, you'd be fuming, but or you'd be on cloud nine. It could be a great day. We're like, oh my God, that was great. But then you'd sit down and you'd have your work in front of you for the next day. And I would just put my earbuds in and listen to iTunes. And it was stable. And it was just I used to say to people, Brian Kiley kind of said this and from working for Conan, and he was right. It's like baseball, where you're just like, like, wow, I went 4 for 4 today. Or, oh my God, I struck out 3 times. You're like, oh, well, gotta get ready for the next day. Like who's pitching tomorrow? And so in a weird way, as stressful as that job could be, and it is very draining, and more so than because you don't realize when it's happening to you because you're in the moment. It's very stable. At the end of the day, no matter what noise or what's going on around you, the job of just writing jokes and trying to be funny and trying to be creative and following the news, it guides you and it serves as sort of your base. And so when that goes away, that's when the roller coaster really begins, because you lose that routine and you lose that, and I've, even in other jobs like that, you brought up WWE, I kind of was seeking that same thing there, but there were so many variables there in that room that it was just like, there was no routine every day, there was no schedule. It was just, and they tell you that going in, but there was no structure. It was all just went all over the place. And, like really anything I've done since leaving teaching really at Emerson has been the thing that, everyone this year was talking about how difficult it was because of COVID, and it was. But for me, it felt like being back at Fallon. That's why in a way where I, it was like, yes, it's crazy. Everyone's moods are up and down. Everything's all over the place, but there are due dates. And the students are going to want, this is when they show up, and this is, and it is like that routine. So it's weird. It's the role, like I said, what I tell people is roller coaster really starts. Of course, when you're trying to get the job, and then it resumes once it's over, because that's when you're kind of either excited about new possibilities or in a free fall. And I hate to tell you, but most of the time, if for most people, you're in a free fall. You leave, you're just wondering, oh God, you're counting the days till your next meeting.
But I know one of the things that has contributed to your stress was the Seth Meyers joke that you wrote for the correspondence dinner, which the particular joke. Do you want to say what the particular joke is?
Sure. Donald Trump says he's running as a Republican, which is interesting because I just assumed he was running as a joke. The stress was that I wrote that joke, and Trump was very upset by it. Seth relayed to me that Trump was very upset by it and wanted to sue the person who wrote the joke. So I had to lay low for a couple weeks, and then when the coast was clear, it got out that I wrote it. It was like a heroic thing for many years. That you ended Trump's first run for presidency, in 2012. It was like, okay, cool. And then when he won, all those same people that had been patting me on the back, I started getting the texts every week that this is, jokingly, but sometimes not, like, haha, this is your fault. And so last year during the COVID, when people were now dying because this guy was president, and I was still getting those texts from people, haha, this is your fault. It wasn't funny anymore. Like, and it was just like, there are a couple people I just don't respond to anymore. And they got it. They finally figured out. But I was just like, it's just in fun, man. Like, yeah, what do you want me to say? And it's just an example of you never know. And I always tell people that think through your jokes, because there's 2 ways it can go. Something that we all write off. I mean, think about it. Think about how many times, for how many years have aliens and UFOs been this haha punchline? And now in a few days, they're going to be declassifying the UFO files. So it's like, well, the narrative can change sometimes. And all of a sudden, that's what happened with that Trump joke, is a joke that you make like, haha, yeah, right, could come true. At the same time, you can write a joke that you feel is harmless, and it can really hurt someone, and it can really hurt someone, the innocent, sometimes. And as we're learning now, jokes that we thought were innocuous are very hurtful to people. And so it really shaped me in a way that I really do try to think through. And I don't always, no one succeeds all the time, but you do try to think, how's this joke going to work out? And all you can do is just try to make sure that it ages better and that you feel good about it.
And now
And
you're going back through your Twitter, making sure you didn't make any jokes about aliens, so you're not responsible for the intergalactic wars.
I've always been very respectful. Hey, man, my dad was a Navy pilot, so I've always been very respectful of aliens.
Yeah.
No, for real. I've always been very like, hey, I'm not getting involved. I'm not getting it. So I don't care, man. I don't want to meet him. Like, and if I do, God bless. I want to learn from the aliens. But
Uh-huh.
I would say that now it's become more of this thing where, and I think it's positive, and I'm trying to embrace it where I'm not back, so to speak. You're really not back until you have your next great success. But in the moment, at least, it's like, I think people have the narrative on me has, I'm really glad I did that podcast. I really had reservations, but I'm glad we finally did it, because I never got a chance to say goodbye to so many of those people that I worked with at Fallon. And a lot of them never got to know really, a lot of them still don't know what really happened there.
Well, you do mention that it came to somewhat of a controversial end. What can you say in terms of context and your
I'll
own?
just say that a new head writer came in. It was someone that I thought was a friend, but this person didn't want me there, and I didn't. That became abundantly clear. And I had on the table since August of 17, long before this person had entered the picture, long before they had come along as a name to come back and be head writer, there had been a lot of difficulty, because I was a new dad, and balancing being a new dad and all the home life stuff that comes with that, and all of a sudden managing Jimmy Fallon on a day-to-day basis and trying to get him to do the monologue, which he's, we all know is not his number one thing. It was just too much. And then I also had, my dad was sick, and I was like, man, and that summer in 17, I did try. Like, I knew, I was like, I'm not good here. Like, that was when some problems were going on. And there was an offer that once things get stabilized and we get head writer, you could take a leave if you wanted. Other people were starting to do that. They were starting to go work on movies. They were starting to go work on other TV shows. And I was like, man, I'll give up the money for 3 months. I just need to stop. And they were like, no, we'll find something for you to do in that time, even if it's less money. Whatever. I was like, okay, well, I'll give up the money. Like, I was just going to go away for a while. And they said, like, even if you need 3 months, I was like, I don't need 3 months, just a month, whatever. And so the head writer came in, it was not working out. And it was conveyed to me because I had to go back and look at some of this stuff recently, via email, that we all know that you're not the problem. We all know no one's looking at you in a negative light, and no one's angry at you right now. You're doing a great job still, because for the 8 or 9 months, I will admit, maybe it was luck, but I did a great job. I all of a sudden had Jimmy thrilled with the monologue in a way he had not been since, like, Jeremy Bronson was running in late night. And with Trump as president, and we were starting to catch up a little bit in the ratings, and we were killing it in the demo, and we were getting a lot of, like, nice press for some of our jokes. But I was feeling like shit, man. And so we agreed, okay, to keep you away because I was like, I don't want to be involved in a fight with this person. Like, because I know how things operate with regard to this person. I don't want to see my name in the papers as this person who drove someone out. And they said, well, we'll get you out of the way and you go take your leave, and it'll be 2 birds, 1 stone. You'll get your break and we'll take care of business here. But it was not how it turned out. And as soon as I was on that leave, the narrative shifted, and what people in the office were told was different than what I had been told. And I didn't know that until it was too late. And it was kind of like the Jay Conan thing. It all came down to contracts, where business wise, the head writer's contract was trickier than mine. And they went business over, in my opinion, but I think the statistics will back it up. I mean, they're in fourth place now. They're behind Gutfeld on Fox. They went business over quality. I was ready to come back. I felt good. I had taken that break, and I had felt nice and refreshed, but that moment never came. And I found out in a very surprising way. I'll just say that's all I can. I'll say it's out there. Like, if people really want to look around for it, they can find it.
Well, you told me a bit of the personal part of this story is while all of this is going on, there's sort of a turmoil at the job. You know, you've been told by a neurologist that it's too much stress. You've got
Yeah,
to.
he said it was gonna kill me. He was almost right. Yeah.
But
Yeah, he
and
said
you pass out on a subway ride, black out,
yes.
and wind up somewhere else. Oh,
Yeah.
your health is sort of down. I want to be delicate about it because I feel like you're sort of still in this in some sense. But I mean, you had these changes. You know, you became a father, and then while the show was sort of happening, and the show sort of contributes to the deterioration of your marriage and the deterioration of your health.
Mhm.
And then at one point, sort of the ride. Well, this just became a terrible metaphor. I was just going to say the ride stops. All of this sort of the professional and the personal and the health all sort of seemed to come to a head in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get out of that? What are you looking at that point in your life?
You know, I don't think I'm out of it yet. I mean, it's just that for so many years, life was just you know, I was married. I was in a relationship that lasted almost 10 years. And I was at a job that lasted almost 9 years. And so that in the whole stretch of the job, I was in the same relationship. I was with my wife, my ex-wife. So yeah, that my default, it's weird. And Robert Morton talks about this a little bit, the old Letterman showrunner, is that you still have, I mean, when you wake up in the morning, sometimes there's this part of your brain where the default is, I'm married to this person and I have to get up and go write jokes for the show. The weird thing is, everyone assumes I'm like 50 because I look older than I am. And I'm only 38. I just turned 38. I'm like an NBA player that it's like, God, LeBron's still playing. It's like he's only 37 or whatever he is. It's like he's just started. I mean, as a kid, I started writing jokes for Jay at 22. But there's a lot of life left in theory, hopefully, so that when you get the next gig and you do the next thing, and even if it's something that you just do for a year, I've been told, even if it's just a 1-year gig that you do every day, you'll get over it. You'll be like, this is my thing that I do now. And I think I had some of that with Emerson this year. I did feel that a little bit.
Well, you've been teaching there for how long now?
I taught there one class right after leaving Fallon, and then this was my first year that I did a full year of teaching there.
Well, so you start teaching right after this experience. I mean, you know, your first day in class. What do you tell kids? Hey, this could be the greatest thing in your life, but it could also make you bleed out of your ear.
Okay. So when I was teaching there, the whole time I first taught in 2019, I was in talks to go back to Fallon. When I was teaching there, it became easy because I looked at it as a way to get myself back into shape. I was like, okay, I'm going to be around funny people who are writing jokes, and that's going to mean I'm going to think of some jokes, and so this will be like my rehab assignment, basically, to go back to work.
Right.
And I was also scouting a little bit. I was also like, all right, if I'm running things again, I might want to hire a couple of these kids when they graduate. And if I were ever in that position again, I would hire a bunch of people. But I was so nervous, and I did feel like a big imposter. And I really did feel that at any moment, one of those kids somehow, I was so paranoid that at any moment someone was going to say, I heard this is how it ended for you at Fallon. And it was just going to be a big disgrace. But what I found instead was they did not care about that show at all. No one watched it. They had all moved on. They all watched Seth. They all watched John Oliver, and like I said, they moved on. They wanted to hear more about that, how to do that, the Seth sort of stuff. They were more interested in that side. The only time Jimmy ever came up was like podcast topics. It was just like, like Jeselnik worked there. And so I'd tell the Jeselnik story. And so, but really it became more me finding out what they were into. And that's sort of when I started becoming more interested in reading material and sort of researching and kind of finding out what audiences like. And that's one of the things I have a meeting about next week. At the same time, showing them stuff they'd never seen before. They'd never seen David Letterman before. I showed them a top 10, and it was like top 10 surprising facts about Sesame Street. And it was from his last year when he was really trying. You know, when he put the pedal to the metal at the end, Letterman, like, oh, I can still do it. He kicked our ass like for a month. We were not beating him. I just remember even Jimmy being like, man, thank God he didn't, like, thank God he only did this at the end. Cause like when Letterman tried, he was unbeatable. No offense to Letterman, but like when he would put it into over, because again, I just explained to everybody the dangers of putting yourself into overdrive every single day. You do need to pace yourself. But when he knew he only had 6 weeks left and was like, shit, I can go full speed, you know, until the end. And I showed them one of those top 10s. And because it was stuff that I knew they would get, it was topical. Man, that room shook. And they were just, their girl, you know, people were crying, laughing, like they were just, and I'll never forget that moment of getting to, through them, watch David Letterman for the first time again and really fall in love with late night again. And they came in after the weekend. I was like, what'd you guys do? And they were like, oh, dude, we were all emailing each other Letterman clips. Did you know he had the show before Jim? Yeah, I knew the guy. He used to be on NBC. Yeah, I did. Yeah, he did a thing with Velcro. And it was like, it became more about that. A month in, it was just a writer's room. It became controlled and it felt like our show. I really did think, because the way it was supposed to go was the grand finale, which Ben figured out, which is why he and I stayed in touch, because he was the smartest. He was probably the most insightful kid in the class. He knew that I was getting ready to go back. He could tell the way I was looking at things and really kind of getting myself into shape. And the big reveal was supposed to be on the last class, me telling them, you know, hey, I hope you guys go out and have a great career in late night. And by the way, thank you for getting me back, you know, because on Monday I'm going to be blank, blankety blank. And but fell apart. And then it's so weird because this time around, you know, we have the first of all, this game I've been working on, this Antisocial Skills. We're going to be pitching that for TV. We have a production company attached, an agency attached. There's a couple studio positions that I'm going to be talking to people about. You know,
this is the comic card game that you and a lot of other people I've interviewed for the Globe and for the podcast. Mike Kaplan and Jenny Zagrino are also writers. On the game.
It's this fun game that started out as a party card game, and this producer found us and really liked it and said, do you mind if I take a stab at turning it into something for TV? And next week and the week after, I think, is when we find out when our meetings are. I've just been kind of taking calls and taking meetings in the meantime for like producing stuff and things like that, or just getting advice. And I happened to meet someone who is an executive who does game shows for a network. And so I was like, okay, well, there's one. But the ironic thing is, 2 years ago, I would have killed for these opportunities. And I'm very grateful for them. Mm-hmm. But it's sort of the opposite, where 2 years ago, it was like, there was a part of me is like, man, I love these kids, but I can't wait to get through this class and get back to work in New York, get back to work in TV. And this time around, it was, I'm going to really miss teaching. Like, it was really like, I miss this. You know, I was a finalist for a full-time job at Emerson. And you really do start to think to yourself, well, this is early. This is sooner than I thought it would be to come back and live in Boston. I feel like I've got a little bit more to give in TV, but I love teaching and I love Emerson, and I'd still love to write too. Like, I still tell that to people. I still say, like, I don't know if I'm as funny as I used to be. And people say, well, you're funny. I go, man, I was fucking funny. Like, when I was like in 2012 at Fallon, it was like, because with all, you know, sometimes I'll talk to people who I know are funnier than me. I'm like, but you're not funnier than I was. Like, you know, I was before the mini stroke. But I'm 80%, which is still pretty good. And so I'd still like to write a little bit here and there. And I still am trying to work on a couple of things. But
is stand-up in that mix at all?
It might be. It's not finalized yet, but I verbally just agreed to the first road gig post-pandemic. You know, the thing with stand-up is I'm one of the few during the pandemic. I didn't miss it at all, which some people say, well, you're not a real stand-up. Okay, that's fair. But at the same time, whenever I go do stand-up and it goes well, it's like anybody where you're like, well, now I'm doing stand-up again. You know, like, well, now I'm back in it. I don't totally know. So we'll see if I officially sign the contract to go do this road gig. For at least for the next 2 months, I have to be doing stand-up again to get ready for that. So all I wanted to do in stand-up was a late night spot. I got to do a couple, 3 actually, I think. And then this doesn't sound as good now, but in the time it was good. I got to follow Louis C.K. on stage at the Cellar, and that was it. Those are the only goals, and they're over. So I'm fine. I'm good with stand-up. Whatever happens, happens.
The world in comedy has changed so much since that first gig in 2003. When you're looking out at this world, does this teaching gig give you a perspective on how things have changed and where you might want to be in that mix from now on?
100%. Everyone's courting that the demographic. So I was teaching every day the focus group that they're always trying to win over. And they're not doing it right. They're just not doing it right. At Fallon, he had that whole controversy over the TikTok thing with Addison Rae and taking material from Black creators on TikTok. And of course it blew up and it became a big thing. But I'll tell you right now, if that's who you're going after, man, they hate that stuff. They feel like you're talking down to them when you do that stuff. It really taught me that we were reading them all wrong. They don't want to see Cardi B co-host a show with you. They don't want to see you do a lip sync. They hate that stuff. They have a very nuanced sense of humor that is a mix of, you really have to get to know these people that are they're all about 21, and you really have to get to know them. It's unlike any sensibility I've ever seen before, which is good, but in a good way. And that's why I have a hopeful feeling for late night, is because when they start being I think it's going to be cool. Late night's going to recover, I think, because the new generation of writers do mesh with the people they're going to be writing for. By the time these people are 30 and writing, and by the time people like my daughter are 11 and just starting to get into these late night shows, it's going to click and it's going to blow up again. But what I will say is that I don't see anyone, and I'm not saying this to insult anybody, but I'm saying this because I see the names and I do know the names and I know the people. I don't see anyone positioned right now, especially at NBC, that has that grasp. I see them operating in the 10 years ago realm, where it's quicks, things are going wrong. Get Jimmy and Justin Timberlake on. No, that's not what people want right now. That's not what they need. There's this thing at Fallon of when they went to Tonight Show, there was this bit called Head Swap that I brought up, where they were oh, well, we got to go to Head Swap. Guys, the bit you should be doing every other week right now is Head Swap. Because that sort of the stuff, the surreal, weird stuff we did at 12:30, that is the stuff that could get you back in the picture right now. The hitting Joe Biden, oh, he's an old guy. These kids they're 21, they hate that. They would always cringe in class when someone had a Biden. They go, come on, man, do better than that. There's so many other ways to make fun of. Come on, he's a grown man who loves cars. He's got sunglasses all the time. He likes ice cream. He's the take on Biden really is that he's he's a 19-year-old for his whole life. That's he's hey bro, what's going on? What's up, man? That's his thing. I think that there need to be some changes in attitude, or just, if they're not going to do it, changes in personnel, where that's what I would love to do. So that's what I've loved. So where I see late night going is, I do see it recovering. Zue, I think there's possibility there. It's going to break through. It's going to be different. It's going to be different people. Amber Ruffin is, in my opinion, I'm sorry, Seth, because I know this probably hits hard, but I think Amber's the best doing it right now. And then Seth, I'd say number 2. Sorry, Seth, but I think you would say the same thing. I think that for me, I would love somewhere, and maybe it's with the game, maybe it's with antisocial skills, or maybe it's something else, or maybe it's a bigger overlapping thing where you work just in general with a bunch of different writers. I would love to be in that position where it's more of a advisory role, and kind of go back, because I know what I'm talking about now. I can go back and say, this is what you guys are courting, and you're not getting, no one's getting it right. So it's not your fault. No one's hitting here, because everyone thinks these kids are all about cancel culture and political correctness. They're not. There is a different nuanced gear for these kids, where there are certain things that are not okay, but beyond that, they are pitch black with their sensibility. And the common theme is punching up and not punching down. And you can tell any joke you want and make it as dark and cringy as you want, as long as it does not punch down.
Well, somebody had on Twitter, I wish I could remember who it was, somebody was talking about cancel culture, and somebody else responded with saying, Lil Nas X just had oral sex with the devil and sold shoes with blood in them. This generation's not what you think it is.
No, they're not. And it's like, it all comes back to, they've had iPads all their life.
Right.
So, no, I'm serious. And so it's like,
no, it is, because I think that's the big change that Jimmy Fallon helped bring in late night was making those bits viral, and now that's something that every show has to do.
Yeah, except that like Amber did this cartoon for Valentine's Day. I think it was for Seth, and they reran it on her show. Sadie, she was watching her iPad, and I heard singing, and I was like, I know that. Is that Amber? It was someone I knew personally, and she was watching it, and it's this cartoon that starts off. The theme of it is for Valentine, I love myself. So for Valentine's Day, I'm going to love myself. And she clones herself, Amber, and it's a cartoon. But then, like, as things go with clones, things go horribly wrong, and then she has to kill the clone of herself. And so it's the same format as Head Swap. And that's why I say, guys, you got to do this again. Is it starts off, where it would always start with Jimmy goes to graphic guy, do a head swap. The graphic guy owes a lot of money to the mafia. They're going to come and kill him. And then it gets really dark. And Sadie was just going, and just this guttural laughs as it got darker and weirder with Amber. And that's what's coming up. And that's the thing. But at the end of the day, and what I would say to everybody, they go, oh my God. And like you said, the Lil Nas X, that was awful. God damn, that was disturbing. That was pitch black. Like horrible. I'd say yes, but did it hurt anybody? No. Did everyone have fun? Yes. Is anything bad going to happen? Is anyone getting on a subway and punch someone else because they are inspired by this? No. Perfect. Then there you go. That's what it is. And I think that I would love to go somewhere and help just bring that sensibility in. And also bring in the kids I worked with and kids like them, and just say, these are the next generation's Amy Poehler's. This is the next generation's Robert Smigel. This is the next generation's Chappelle in some cases, where it's like, this is going to be, and I know we may look at it and say, you don't have to get it. It's fine. It's for our kids. We're trying to make money we're using them. Okay, I got to pay for my daughter, but I'm also going to be trying to make money off of people like that. So that's who we got to focus on. But also it's fun too, because you just see new joke mechanisms and new ways of telling jokes and being funny that you've never seen before. That's why when it's like, I see a joke that's just about the subway being dirty, or a joke that's about Biden being old, or just whatever, or, something happened with a computer, it must be Putin. It's just like, and I just think that there's a lot going on right now that's not bad. It's not funny, but it's not, you're not hitting what you need to hit to get people back.
Well, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Nick. I appreciate it.
Thanks again to Jon for the interview. This one was a tough edit because we had so much to cover, so I'm hoping this gives you a taste of an extraordinary period in the life of a stand-up comedian and writer. You can find the podcast Here's What People Are Talking About on Apple, Spotify, and all the usual podcast locations. Jon's website is www.rinemania.com, and that's where you can find at least a partial accounting of his late-night monologue jokes. Follow him on Twitter and Instagram at @RineMania. Antisocial Skills is at askills.com, which should be easy to remember, and on Twitter at antiskills and Instagram at antisocialskillsgame. This is the last episode of the season if you've been listening in order. Thanks for going through this whole season with me. If you liked this episode, if you like this podcast, please consider subscribing on Apple, Google, or Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, so you never miss an episode, and you can go back and listen to the previous episodes and find more material at www.departmentoftangents.com. Tell your friends and family, whoever you think might enjoy this. Spread the links. Until next season, thanks for listening.
Here you are.